Part 1. The unfolding of the great mystery. First of all, was it really a dream? Was it all a dream? All of it? All those women who appeared in my office and told me about those incredible adventures? Was the island just a dream? Was the whole thing just something I cooked up in my mind on a bad night, something like Dickens said about Scrooge, a fragment of an undigested potato? I could never tell. I still can't tell. But I still come to tell you about it, to talk about it, and maybe, if I'm lucky, to get some clarity about these things that I've seen that have so troubled me, so confused me, and yet brought me here tonight to talk to you. First of all, I should tell you a little bit about parts of myself that you should know. First of all, my employment. I am by profession a heretician, in the sense that almost every atrocity ever committed in history has been committed in the name of normal. I am not normal. I am far from normal, and consequently, I could be one of the targets of one of those atrocities, just as you might be. In Austin, by the way, I've become an official handmaiden of the Antichrist, which is not a title that I've put on my webpage yet, but intend to add soon. This came about when a group of faculty from the university in Dallas, Texas, came down to see our building. And as they were driving by, one of them said, "What is that?" And their guide said, "Well, that's the communication building." And they said, "Oh my God, isn't that where Sandy Stone teaches?" I said, "Well, yeah, she's up there. Why?" "Oh, she's that person who teaches young children to change their sex. She's a handmaiden of the Antichrist." And I thought, oh, great. Okay. So I'm going to have that put on a t-shirt from cafepress.com, by the way. You can get them. You too can be a handmaiden of the Antichrist. So I was, one of the problems with writing a thing called the Neo-Vagina Monologues is that it gives you the impression that the vagina speaks. Now, I've been around the world a couple times. I've seen some strange stuff. But I've never heard one of these things say anything. And so, I guess in this way, I'm kind of a ventriloquist. I have to do the talking. But I'm talking for a part of me that has a lot to say, because it's seen a lot of weird things. I wasn't born with it. It came along later. And it kind of looked around and said, "Where the hell am I?" And from that, I jumped back a little bit. First of all, there was a lot of medical discussion about transgender. Everybody has an answer. There are all kinds of medical, psychological, legal, medical-legal, legal-medical, psycho-legal, medical, psycho-legological explanations for what makes people transgendered. And speaking as a theoretician with a background in neurology, a fair knowledge of medicine, whose father was an attorney, I can say to you without any fear of contradiction that nobody has the faintest fucking idea what makes people transgender. Although there are some interesting ideas kicking around. One of them has to do with the fact that if you are exposed to diethylstilbestrol in your first trimester of pregnancy, then your child will be, in the medical term I believe is fucked up, So, it so happens that I was a DES baby. DES was given to mothers in the 1930s, at the period when medicine was just emerging as the handmaiden of modern science, as something that was going to permanently change the world. We were going to go into a beautiful, grand, and brave new world in which science would show us the future, and in which medicine could intervene to provide such wonderful things as painless childbirth and frozen orange juice, and other wonders besides. And in the course of that, my mother, who had had a history of miscarriages, was given diethylstilbestrol in order to prevent that from happening again. She was carrying me at the time. For those of you who don't know, diethylstilbestrol is an artificial female hormone, vaguely, in theory, related to estrogen, but in practice, something totally different on its own. When taken, can do things like suppress abortion or miscarriage, and also does such interesting side effects as turning your nipples dead black, which makes you look very interesting. My mother did this, and 9 months later, I was born. I was a perfectly normal geek in all respects, except for the fact that I had strange and terrible dreams from the time that I was old enough to remember them. I dreamed that I was on an island called Girl Island, and everyone else on the island was a girl, and we were all playing together. And we all did strange things together, like climbing mountains, running, rowing canoes down rapids, the kind of things that little girls didn't do. And I couldn't figure out what any of this was about, except I began to realize that the other kids looked at me rather oddly. Now, when you're a girl inside, and you're about 5 years old, people tend to react to you strangely. They get odd impressions of who you are. You can't help it. You're just being whoever you are. You find yourself playing with the little girls instead of with the little boys. This gets the little boys to look at you rather oddly. You find yourself wanting to wear the clothing that little girls wear, and this gets you looked at even more oddly. You find yourself wanting to do all sorts of other strange things. And this has the tendency to ostracize you. You are self-selecting, remember, and also has the occasional tendency to get the shit kicked out of you, which is one of the things that makes it even more interesting to be young, gifted, and trans. So there we were. Kate Bornstein mentions a time when she went to the circus, to the sideshow, and she went into the presence of a giant, an enormous man, who, when he laid eyes on her, bent down, took a ring the size of a tire rim off his finger, and gave it to her. And in that moment, she says, she knew she was a freak. I didn't have any such wonderful moment of revelation. I didn't know exactly when I was a freak. Maybe it was during those periods when I was getting the shit kicked out of me at lunch. Maybe it was when I had my first experience of being silenced, a common feminine pursuit. It happened to me at school in the middle of having the shit kicked out of me, when suddenly one of the three people who were busy beating me up pulled out a package which he unwrapped and showed me a beautiful nickel-plated revolver, fully loaded, which he said he would use to blow my head off if I told anyone what they were doing to me. That was my first experience of being silenced.